Welcome to the Mamba Mortgage podcast. My name is Jared Shore, owner and CEO, and I'm here with a very special guest today, Addison Newell.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Your last name right?
Yeah.
Newell? Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. You had a real long walk up the hallway to join us today. So
yeah, those 3 flights of stairs are pretty brutal at times.
I love it. Addison, I'm going to give you everything I know you by, and tell me if I'm missing anything or if any of these don't match up. So, investor, real estate investor. Obviously, the building we're in is you're part owner of. Entrepreneur, coach.
Kind of, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Try not to be, but somehow I keep getting roped into it.
Yep.
So,
anything else?
Just residential real estate investor, operator, and
love it.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Perfect. Today's topic, and we'll get more into why we brought Addison on. Today's topic is team dynamics, and man, teams are fun. People are fun, especially when you interact with a lot of people, in a team, and so really kind of digging deep in how we can better utilize our teams and put people in spots where we're successful, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of the big topic. But first, how did you get into real estate?
Yeah, it's such a simple answer, but it's a mentor. So Rex Fisher, he gets credit every time I get asked that question. Met him one time, and 4 months later, we'd meet once a month. 4 months later, I bought my first rental property, so I was a really easy sell to get into real estate. Always been a numbers guy, so once you see it in an Excel sheet, and you're like, well, I feel like an idiot if I don't buy rental properties. So, and it's just so cool. That was, 4.5 years ago that process started, and to see how that first rental led to the next one, to partnering here at Refinery 46, getting a chance to run this building, make it really profitable, and then buy in.
Yeah.
And now still doing the residential, but last Friday closed on my own commercial building near downtown. So continuing to go on that, just real estate's such a snowball activity. So, anyway.
So having good people around you got you into this.
Yeah, absolutely. Just their influence to answer all the questions. I would say right now I've got a bench of 5 younger guys that are anywhere from like 5 to 10 years younger than me, who are now all wanting to get into real estate. And I'm like, oh man, is this what I sounded like to Rex, when I wanted to start? So they're asking all the questions. Should I get do I need to get an LLC? Do I need to do this? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you just need to buy the first rental and learn all the things you don't know.
Yep.
So
you have to fail a little bit, right?
Yes. And it's easier to fail. I would say it's easier to fail in a $100,000 house than trying to do something way bigger. The mistakes, that was literally Rex's advice, was go buy a 900 square foot house because the roof can only cost so much. And I was like, that advice was so brilliant 4.5 years ago.
I love that.
Yeah.
Shout out to Rex Fisher.
Yes. Yeah.
So, so obviously Addison, being a part owner of this building, and us being tenants in the building, and we love this space because, and I don't think I realized it when we first moved into this space, there is so much real estate talk and engagement, investor-wise, that happens in this building. It's like, I think it's one of the central hubs of Indianapolis for real estate that's going on right now. So I don't know how much influence did you have on that, or was that organic? And
yeah, when Brian Shutt and Jesse Cross, who initially bought the building, who owned HomeSense Heating and Cooling, which is who they bought the building for, the vision was actually home services, was to be a hub for that. And I think there's been times where we had a good amount of home service people, but we found, especially as I came into the mix and I was passionate about real estate, I meet a lot of people who are passionate about real estate, and then we start hanging out here, and people are like, well, can I just office here? Should I get a membership here? And so I think whoever's leading the building, they have a huge influence on the type of people that show up. And the fact that we still care about home services, that's our draw when we do our luncheons, real estate, it's real estate and home services luncheon. The goal is...
And they all kind of tie together, right? We all kind of need each other to operate.
And most, I found at one point, real estate agents would call me and be like, hey, do you have a plumber? Hey, do you have an electrician? Hey, do you have this? And I said, how about you come to this lunch and you meet all of my people so you can stop asking me because I make $0 off that referral. Yeah. So I'd rather see those home service companies benefit by connecting them to more real estate professionals. So, having you all here, Tyler Lingle, Roots Realty as a co-working member, have been
Ferris
huge.
Is here.
Ferris
Right
Property Groups.
Door.
Yep. Right next door. So having you all come and bring your networks in, impart your energy in. That's where the real ripple comes in actually building the community. It gets landlocked by one person. You actually need to create a movement of people. So it's been really exciting to see that an industry I'm passionate about has grown a lot here. And the one that's kind of hidden on the side is our marketing and creatives. We started a luncheon for them solely because I looked and I saw there were 10 companies in our building who are touching video production. And I was like, they would come and ask me questions about their business, how to run their business. And I was like, I have no idea how to put like a travel budget together or all these things. So let's get you all in a room. And that group's taken off. I mean, they could run that one without us at this point. It's really cool to see them build a community and a culture there. And sometimes you just have to look around and see who's already in your building, you know.
Well, that's good to know. Michaela, who's sitting behind the camera here, probably is yelling at me silently, going, "There's video production people in this office," because we've been trying to set up the video for this, and it's we're not, we are not tech professional people. We're real estate people that like to talk about real estate, and so that's good to know. We need to rely on them next time we set up.
My favorite is I sent them, I brought a Canon camera that my wife had because she got into photography at one point and the battery had died. So I texted like all those people and I said, "Hey, does anyone have a Canon battery?" Right. And like several of them were like, yeah. And I'll bring you one. Not one of them fit because they all have really nice cameras. And I just have like a, starter camera. And I was like, well, I should have thought that through. Right.
Photography is an industry that you think you have nice stuff and then you get into it and you're like, oh, there's levels of photography here for sure. Well, let's dive into this. I'm not a big reader, right? I probably read 2 books a year at most. Like that's given me a lot of credit there.
Sometimes all you need.
It's all you need. I was down getting coffee one day. You were there, and I don't even know how the conversation got started, but you were talking about. Actually, no, I was discussing. Let me back up because there's layers to this. We hired on a VP of sales, and as he was talking, he had mentioned that his mentor and boss at his previous company had mentioned the 6 working geniuses. I looked into it real briefly. Said, hey, that'd be a good exercise for him and I to do as we're kind of starting a new journey with each other. Bought the book. It was sitting on my desk. One of the luncheons that you guys put on was a real estate luncheon that actually you guys had invited me to speak at. And the book was brought up like 2 times in that meeting. And I was like, I should probably read this book at this point. And so immediately went and read it. I think I read it maybe in a few days and then put our team through the exercise of it, and it was eye-opening. So the book we're talking about here is The 6 Working Geniuses, and as Manas on our team before we recorded reminded us that we only have 5 in our office. Like we're missing some of the geniuses. So there's a lot of, I would say, personality tests out there, and the cool thing about the assessment on this, in my opinion, I'll let you talk, kind of dig into it more. But what really captured my attention on this is it takes the personalities of each people and puts it into how you work together, probably in a better way than I've ever seen with any other quote unquote personality test. And so walk us through the book and kind of the geniuses and how that works, with teams working together and how things get done and how that ties together with maybe just your team, our team, real estate in general. Because I think, most of our audience are real estate people somehow. I rambled on there, but I'll let you.
I mean, the model, first and foremost, it's productivity, not a personality assessment. Will you glean things about yourself personally? Yeah, absolutely. But it's way more about how you work, how you are meant to work. How do you find fulfillment in your work? And for a lot of people, where you find shame in your work, not because of things that are actually in your control. And so that's why I've kind of fell in love with the assessment immediately. Is I've taken things like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or all those different things, and they have their strengths. If you're willing, any model, if you're willing to really dive in, there's strengths to it, right? One pushback I've always had on the Enneagram was like, okay, I don't need you to define me down to my core as a human being, because we all know that's probably not going to happen from just an assessment. And I say this as like a fan of the Enneagram. I think it produces a lot of value as well. But the working genius is just unashamedly like, hey, this is how you are 9 to 5. And it bleeds a little bit into how you probably are at home and some different things. And my wife and I have used the assessment. We actually use it for parenting. I think on LinkedIn somewhere I have a post that is family is work, marriage is work, relationships are work, work is work, right? And it's understanding like anything that's like worth doing it's going to require work, and putting into it. And how do I show up in those moments, right? So one, that's why I love the assessment. Two, how I found it was 5-6 years ago. I was in a corporate job and had felt lots of frustrations in this job as kind of a consulting role. I really liked the work that I was doing, but I did not like the role that I was being put in to do the work, right? So I was very passionate about the content, but not my vehicle to engage the content. And I was listening, I think, to a Dave Ramsey podcast at that point, Entree Leadership, and he had Patrick Lencioni on, who's the author of The 6 Working Geniuses, and his group, The Table Groups, who created it. And he starts describing the working geniuses, and I'm just listening to it, and it's like this light bulb moment of like, oh my gosh, this explains everything. It explains every reason that I'm struggling in this job. You couldn't even take the assessment yet; it wasn't out. You couldn't go get certified in the assessment yet; they hadn't finished it. He was just like,
and you're certified to,
and I'm certified now in the assessment, purely out of a passion, to just do it because I really fell in love with this. And I remember after I listened to that podcast with a very superficial knowledge of the model, I called my boss at the time and I said, I have to quit this job because I will never be happy here. And it's not because of you, but it's because the role that I was hired into is different than the role you're actually needing from me. And I thought I was coming in to exercise like these geniuses, but really you want these things, which are my frustrations. And so how the model works is, when you take the assessment, there are 6 working geniuses. They are wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. They spell widget to help you remember it. Wonder and invention happen in the ideation phase. Discernment and galvanizing, they call it the activation phase. So getting people on the same page with the idea and their enthusiasm to get going. And then enablement, tenacity, they get stuff done for you. When you take the assessment, you will have 2 geniuses. That could be any of those pieces of the widget. You'll have 2 competencies and 2 frustrations. The imagery that we use to describe what a genius is versus a competency versus a frustration, we use coffee, which is funny enough, I spilled coffee in here so while we were talking. So if you are working in your area of genius, imagine pouring coffee, like hot coffee. That hot liquid is your energy for the day. And you're taking it and you're pouring it into a thermos with a lid on it. That's like a Yeti one, right? Or something like that can hold it. That coffee will stay hot for 8 hours, all day long. At the end of the day, it's still hot. You can still drink it.
I burn my mouth half the time because I forget that it's still hot, right? And 8 hours later, I'm drinking what I think is cold coffee and it's still hot.
And so that's what and everyone knows those days that they've had at work where they're like, man, I didn't feel like I worked at all today. And it could look a million different ways for people, right? Some people are like, put me in a room, put headphones on. I don't want to talk to a human. I'm just doing this task over and over and over. I'm getting a ton done, and they loved it. Some people are like, I went to networking events all day and I just talked to people and like, I don't know what I did today, but I loved it. And so that's what it's like when you're in your area of genius. Your area of competency is like taking that same coffee and pouring it into a mug that has an open lid, a normal coffee mug. It'll stay hot for 30 minutes to an hour or something like that before you go reheat it in the microwave and then reheat it again. And the thought being there is like, you can work in your area of competence, but you'll get drained. That heat, that energy will get drained at some point way faster than putting in that thermos. Working in your area of frustration is like taking that coffee and pouring it into a broken mug. It's going straight on the floor. The whole concept of go work on your weaknesses in the working genius world, it's don't do that. It's called mitigate them. Spend as least amount of time in your area of frustration. One, because you don't find fulfillment by it. And chances are there's someone else on your team who would actually really enjoy it and do a way better job than you. Now, caveat all of that with the fact that most professionals, especially well-experienced ones, probably like the 3 of us in here, is like, you're probably really good at all 6 of them. And if you're an entrepreneur or in a small business, you have to be good.
You have to do all.
You have to do them all. It doesn't mean you like doing them. It doesn't mean doing all 6 of them actually fills you up and gets you excited for the next day. So once you learn about the model, it really teaches you how to start bringing the right people in around you to take over the frustrations first and then eventually the competencies, so you can spend 80% of your work week in that area of genius. And a lot of people, they don't know the vehicle. They don't know how to get to that position. So they spend, there's some great entrepreneurs out there, great founders that just like eventually burn out and quit because of payroll, because of all these other things that it's like, they could not get it off of their plate to actually spend time doing why they set out to do it in the first place, because they really loved it.
So, all right. So you've got these areas where you love to work in and you get fulfillment and it's great. You've got these other, pieces and areas of work that you're good at, but you just don't get love from it. But you also, it doesn't frustrate you. Yeah. And then you have these frustrations that you might spend some time in and be good at it, but you hate it. You hate, I think the book calls it the Monday blues, right? You're like, I don't want to go to work. Today, because you're probably spending a lot of time in the frustration side of it. Yeah. The two examples I have personally, as I was reading through this book, one, I've always, you mentioned shame, right? And sometimes that's a strong word, and I've always felt, I guess, shame's probably the right word for it. In other jobs that I've had where I was really good at what I did. But they were trying to get me to do it in a way that didn't fulfill me, right? I was a top producer, and they were like, "You're lazy," right? But it was because I was doing things maybe smarter, not harder, kind of that phrase. But it was like, well, you're not doing it the way that we want you to do it, and that way frustrated me. And so it made a lot of sense to me that I was like, this is why I was doing it that way. And this is why I was being, I guess, shamed, if you will. So it put some clarity around for me in the previous job.
Well, and I can give you some specific examples on that. Because so there's a whole section when we do a workshop, and if you ever want to learn more beyond the book, like you can go to Spotify, whatever, the Apple Store, and there's a 6 Working Genius podcast by Patrick Lencioni, and they've got a lot of great episodes. And it's pretty early on in their episode list, but it's Guilt and Judgment is the episode you can listen to. So guilt comes from when you don't understand how you are meant to work. So you go into a job and you're constantly getting beaten up by a boss or for failing on a certain KPI, and you're just like, why can't I do this, right? Why can't I just be consistent? Everybody else on my team is being consistent with this. And it's because you don't realize like that's an area of frustration for you. I'll say my frustrations are wonder and tenacity. So it's the bookends of work. I'm frustrated by them. Yes. And so I was always, a student, a great student, but I never did my homework on time, right? So at all. I was so bad at like being proactive with that, but I am really good on the fly, with things. So I remember one day in like a kind of higher level math class, I was just like, why can't I just go home and do my homework? So I'm not like stressed every day that I show up here. And I didn't realize I was just naturally dodging that work because it was frustrating to actually sit down and focus and finish the job.
Sounds very similar to me.
Yeah. And what I needed was like, I still had to get it done. Like this isn't an excuse. I can't go to my teacher and say, hey, I don't have tenacity and I can't like get this stuff. That's not an option, but I can gamify it, right? How can I break up that tenacity into a way where I'm mitigating my exposure and I'm not sitting for an hour and a half and doing it. But if I plan things out, I could do 20 minutes here, 30 minutes here, little burst, right? There's just ways that
you're just not spending as much time in that. You're getting it done, but you're spending small chunks in.
Or I could be leveraging other people. Maybe there's a way that I'm partnering with someone who does have the drive to hold me accountable to get through it as we work together. So that's guilt, is when you don't understand yourself. Judgment is when you don't understand how the people around you are supposed to work. And I think tenacity is like maybe the most important genius of all.
What geniuses are you?
So I'm discernment and galvanizing.
Okay.
So, and they're all equally important, but like as somebody who's frustrated by tenacity, I am drawn towards people with, my wife is enablement and tenacity. We work very well. She gets things done. If it was left up to me, our deck would be 3 different colors, right? I start things and I don't finish them. So, and she could look at that and just be like, hey, why do you keep starting things and then you never follow through? We have 3 bathrooms in our house. Not one of them is finished, because they were left to me. Speaking of a deck, we were starting to build one, and she told me from the very beginning with a lot of love, you cannot build this deck. She goes, you have to pay someone else to build this deck. And it's not like her waiting until later and then holding it over my head and judging me and being mean. She said, I know your weakness here. So like, let me help you circumvent that. And let's make sure we bring the right people in who get it done. So that judgment is really powerful because it starts really small and then it grows. And especially as a leader in an organization or on a team of people, you will start to regulate the people on your team like, oh, they can't do this. Oh, they can't do that. Now you're pigeonholing them. So now instead of growing them and understanding what they actually need, you're not investing in them anymore to grow. And I'll cap this part off with a story I share in the workshops, but it's actually with my wife. And 7-8 years ago, we were I joined her in the missions field in South Africa. So we were missionaries in this little property in rural South Africa, and she really wanted to become more like these two older women that she had spent a lot of time with. And it's very funny. My wife is 5'2", 5'3", Italian descent, so very dark hair. And these two women she really looked up to were these like 5'11" blonde Aryan women. So she couldn't just be more different than them on the outside and also on the inside, right? They were people who just like people flocked to. They were the loudest presence in the room. They were very motherly. My wife's very like reserved and kind of quiet. She'll speak last. And she's just like, I really want to be like both of them. And I'm thinking, I'm kind of more like those women, than she is. And I was like, well, yeah, I'll help you be like them, right? And I just remember the conversations of her beating herself up, me probably judging her and beating her up of just like, why can't you figure it out? Why can't you be like them? And then the day she took this assessment and I saw what she was frustrated by and I saw where her genius was, my first response was, Katrina, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
She's like, what do you mean? I was like, I've been holding you accountable to a goal you should have never set for yourself. You were never supposed to be this way. Yeah. So I've been judging you in some way, and you've had so much guilt thinking you're not good enough as a person. And so that's really powerful, moment with that. And it's just from having your eyes open at what somebody's test result. There was no workshop that followed up with that. There was no deep dive, no podcast. It was, you just took it and you're like, oh my gosh, I've made a huge mistake. Right.
Well, it opened our eyes as a team. So my geniuses are invention and discernment.
Nice.
And
same as Patrick Lencioni.
Yep. And so I love, somebody brings a problem. I love, hey, let's come up with something out of thin air and like let's figure it out. And I'm very quick to say this is a good idea, this is a bad idea. Yeah. And what we found as a team was we were coming up with a lot of great ideas, and nobody was doing them because we have 0 galvanizers on our team. And galvanizing is kind of like, hey, you got this idea. It's a good idea. Now let's present it to the team and get everybody excited, and on board with it and, rally the troops. And then the next step is you got people that are raising their hands saying, hey, I want to do this. I want to do this, right? Well, we skipped over the rally the troops piece and went straight to, hey, let's do it. But nobody understood and was like, it didn't resonate with them. It was just, here's something new that we're doing with no excitement around it. And so we're trying to figure out how, as a team, how do we galvanize right now? How do we have a galvanizer on our team? Or do we need to bring a galvanizer in on our team? Or is there somebody on our staff that we can bring them into some of the decisions and say, hey, like, now go rally the troops kind of deal. And so it was really eye-opening to us, be like, this is why we struggle to get new ideas rolling, is because we don't have any galvanizers on our team. And we thought we did. We thought we had people that were galvanizers, and ironically, some of the people who we thought were galvanizers, it was their frustrations. Yeah. They were good at it, like you mentioned before, but it's not what they love to do.
Yeah, no, and there's so many things on that of, we look at like, well, how can we add a genius and what can that do for the team? But sometimes that absence of a genius tells you more of what's going on in your dynamic and the pressures that it's putting on other people. So typically if your team's not big enough yet to have every single genius fully represented and the people with that genius in the right role to do that, which is really important, people with the competency of galvanizing would have to step in. And what that requires is, and they can do it, they can step in, they're better than the person who's frustrated by it for sure. They're going to feel better doing it, is clear parameters on what is the expectation of you to galvanize? There's actually another company in the building here who had no galvanizers. They actually, all the founders were all tenacity, and their one employee was tenacity. So, and they were all in the ideation or tenacity, right? And there was no galvanizing. They all didn't like it.
They got a lot of stuff done, though.
They got a lot of stuff done, but they got a lot of sometimes wrong stuff done. You know, so but one of them, he had it as a competency, and so out of our workshop, they go, okay, every week when we meet, he's got the marker. He's driving it. He's going to ask the hard question. You know, galvanizing is rallying the troops. It's sometimes good at the sales part. What it's really great at is engagement, good or bad. So they'll ask an uncomfortable question.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole nother section we can jump into, but it's the craves and the crushes. And when you don't have a galvanizer on your team, you don't have anyone who craves engagement. And again, good or bad engagement. And what happens is, like, sometimes your team gets more fragile when bad stuff does happen.
Yeah.
Because people don't know how to have a discourse with each other without going from 1 to 10. As my wife would tell you, and my Myers-Briggs would tell you, I think it's called like the protagonist or something. I make problems when there's not problems, right? So I will create a reason for us to engage and have a hard conversation. So it's funny, in my household or on our team, I anticipate and I kind of desire pushback.
You're the devil's advocate of everything.
Yeah. So it's like, or like, if somebody says something and I'm like, oh, there was more there. What was that?
Yeah.
What did you say? Oh, you didn't want to say something because you didn't think I'd like it. I need you to say it right now. And I'm not mad. I don't need to be right. I just want to engage. Like, I want to fully hear that. So sometimes understanding when you're what you're missing on your team will show like what your business is missing as a whole. So if you didn't have a wanderer on your team, if no one had the genius, then that means no one's craving consideration. They're not pausing and asking these bigger questions that make you stop and think, like, are we even doing this right? Is there a better way to do this? Some of the ones that you'll probably see happen the most is if you have no discernment or no tenacity on your team. No tenacity means nothing gets done, right? No discernment means your team gets constantly frustrated because no one's like pausing and refining what's actually happening. You know, they're never checking the invention part. They're never checking the wonder. Yeah, they're just like,
here's an idea, go.
Yeah, here's an idea, go. They don't pause and say, love where your heart's at. Have you thought about this? Have you thought? And sometimes it's not, oh, let's have an hour-long conversation. It's just, I just need to know, have you thought about that? And you're like, yeah, I thought about that. And you're like, cool. All right, sounds good. Let's go. You know, but just that pause can lead to the people at the end of your funnel on your team who are delivering the product just being like, we're constantly doing revisions because there's no checks or balances that are happening. Anyway,
How do you tie this to? Okay, let's tie it to your business as a real estate investor. Yeah. Because a lot of the investors that we work with, and it's a one-man show or maybe a two-man show, right? They may have a partner. How do you tie this to maybe the bigger picture of real estate investing when you're a one-man show, but you also have people you have to rely on to get these deals done? Yeah.
So the biggest thing for me, and where I can look back and have some revisionist history in the investor journey, where I had the most frustration was creating my buy box, because it's a lot of wonder. So I'm frustrated by wonder, right? Throw me a house and I can figure out if it's probably a good idea, right? That I can get into the ID loop, invent and discern and figure that out. But where should I buy? Why should I buy? Like, that was really hard for me. I didn't want to sit and kind of whiteboard and deeply reflect on all the reasons why I want to get going, right? So that process was really essential to have a mentor like Rex, was to meet other people in the industry. I would say, you know, Jesse Cross, one of the owners here, has been a great real estate mentor of mine as well. And then on the other end was the tenacity part. My most stressful time in real estate is the week of closing, because I 100% know every single person being paid in that transaction is going to fail me in that week. And they're going to demand work of me to, like, I mean, literally in the commercial building, and we were closing. No one failed me on the closing, but we closed at noon. I was getting questions at 11:30.
High stress, right?
High stress, and it's for me. I will go into every interaction with a lender, with an agent, with whoever. I said, you are not allowed to ask me a big question the week of closing. Because I'm giving you, like, so I will start an engagement with the lender. I will send them a zip drive Here's personal financial statements. Here's all of my properties. Here's my DSCR. Here, like you have everything. I'll give you the login to my bank account. You know, like from the very beginning, there's nothing is hidden.
Yeah.
So I now need to trust that you're going to be doing your process to not put me in a situation where I have to fully be in tenacity mode, because I'll get it done, but I'm not going to be happy when I get it done, right? And I'm not going to remember our interaction very well, and I'm probably not going to use you again, you know, if that's how you made me feel in that moment. So bringing in people around you to support with that, and I would say for the investor, it's having a really good agent who's going to field a lot of that stuff for you on the front end. It's building a relationship with the lender who knows you, who knows your tendencies, and you might have to go through one rough first deal with them, but then like invest and build that relationship for the next one to be easier, the next one to be easier. So
basically bringing people around that fit the mold.
Yeah. And be ready you're going to have to do WIDGET the first time. Right. And that's why you just got to get in for your first deal, find out what you liked, what you didn't like in that process. And, you know, once now we have our buy box established, like real estate investing's easy. It's fun. I know exactly 46201, 46219, 46205. Like I know if you tell me 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom, I know exactly how much that house should be. And the minute, I mean, transparently, we bought one in 46219 and someone's like, hey, it's for 280 and it's a 4 bedroom, 2 bath. I said, I don't care how bad it is, buy that house. I was like, those things are 380. You know, that you put in. And now 6 months later, we bought it for 280. We put about 40 into it, and Zillow doesn't know about the updates, but it has it at 385.
That's amazing.
And we're like, that's because we rinse and repeat. I don't have to wonder. I already know my clear buy box on that. Now I just need people around me to get it done.
You've just zoned in. You become an expert in that area, that buy box that you've had. I love that. Okay. So team wise, you've mentioned, you know, obviously your relationship with your wife, this works, right? We've talked about teams. I think probably the biggest struggle, and maybe you kind of touched on this, is the solo entrepreneur, right? And I think the frustration part of this is probably the biggest thing for a solo entrepreneur, right? So if I remember what you said correctly, break it up into chunks, and so that way you're not spending as much time in your frustrations and spending more time in your genius.
You have to have the self-awareness about what I use this language when sometimes when I work with teams, the 6 working geniuses will be the 3rd workshop in a series of 3. So the first 2 are really business building. They're inspired by the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS. And what I tell them from the very beginning is we're going to build the business you want. So the first 2 sessions are building a successful business. The working genius is building the business you want to be part of. So it's finding the right people to come around you to actually, like, when you show up for work, you know, for me, as a discerner and a galvanizer, I don't mind sitting in a boardroom with people, problem solving all day long. It's fun. That's really enjoyable for me. So meeting with clients is really fun for me. What's not fun is
sitting in a boardroom all day. I'd be attentive for about 10 minutes. And then my mind would be 5 million other places. And so become aware of who you are, what you want to build, and then start taking steps towards actually building it. And that's the hardest part for the solo person, is who's that first hire going to be? Is it and sometimes start with a virtual assistant. Bring somebody in at a really low cost that you can just learn how to work with. You can realize how bad you are at managing people and like communicating your expectations and things like that. But it really demystifies the fact that you probably, with the exception of a few people, you can't do this by yourself. You are going to have to hit a stage where you were ambitious enough to go out on your own. You probably have big enough goals that do require a team to be around you. And this tells you what you need to start looking for. I was just thinking about real estate agents. Okay. And are there frustrations if, you know, as a real estate agent, I would say, this is a generalization, but probably most real estate agents operate pretty close to the same geniuses, right? To be successful. Maybe not, but my mind thinks that they probably are. If you have a team, right, that is operating and trying to accomplish the same goal, you have a bunch of people that have the same geniuses, how do you, without bringing new people in, what would be your strategy to say, okay, we take these people and we need to kind of fulfill all these geniuses at some point. What do you do? How do you do that with a team when you don't have everybody?
Yeah, and the fun part is I've worked with a few real estate brokerages and done the 6 Working Genius, so it's kind of cool to be able to pull up what their genius profiles were in the team makeup. So that's the beauty of bringing in an admin person as well, or maybe a marketing person who's not an agent, but is going to help on the business side, and they can come in with different geniuses. But I think any real estate agent can be any combo of the geniuses and be incredibly great. So I'll tell you what I don't need as a real estate investor in a real estate agent is wonder. And I don't need invention, and I don't need discernment.
Yeah.
I just need you to get it done.
Yeah.
And honestly, this was, Rex paired me up with an agent on his team, Eric Weidman, who's been my agent for like every deal. And Rex didn't know if the Working Geniuses at that point or anything like that. And one thing, Eric, and I've never had him take the assessment or anything like that, but I can tell you he has enablement, which is, how can I help?
Yep.
And on my second purchase, he stopped me before we put the offer in, and he just said, I hear you saying this is a good financial investment. Is this a good investment for you? Like, he asked me the question, and I was like, man, I need that because I'm such a run and gunner that I need somebody who can pause me. If you put me with someone that was like me, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble because there's no one's saying no. No one's putting checks and balances on that. So when we've worked with those agent teams, we break it down into thinking of a client that's a first-time home buyer versus a first-time investor versus an upgrading home buyer versus a multi-time investor. And each of those clients need a different type of agent. That first-time home buyer has no idea what they're doing. They need help. They need someone who can ideate with them. It's emotional. It's not logical. It's not baked in the numbers. It is purely like help them not have cold feet and not make it down the aisle, right? The first-time investor is savvy a little bit. They need a little bit of refining. They probably need a little more discernment, a tiny bit of invention. And then they need you to help them get it through. That multi-time investor is like, I'm finding my own leads. I don't need you to go hunt leads for me. Or maybe you are getting off market, and that's a different dynamic. That's a lot of tenacity. And then that, someone upgrading their house is probably, they already know where they want to live. They know the general area. They've got to probably have a little bit of a buy box. They're going to be really picky. They need you to probably negotiate more seller credits, more things getting fixed for them. That's a lot more galvanizing, that's coming in, probably galvanizing and tenacity, which it has my favorite description of any of the profiles. A GT, business partner here, Jesse, is a GT. Anybody that I work with, I give them a document that's my own version of the descriptions for these. It's kind of a bigger culmination. It starts with, I came here to kick butt and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum. That's what a GT does. And in those moments, that's what I want that at the table with me, right? Rex, throw him out here. He's a WG, right? And that shows that galvanizing really shows up when he has to engage with the seller's agent or the seller themselves, and we're getting closer to closing and things like that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, any combo works. It's probably more dependent on the buyer at that point and what they actually need from the agent, or even from the lender side as well. You probably could do the same tree,
100%
decision tree of what's the right genius, what's the right loan officer for this type of client, right?
Do you find, and we're kind of coming up on time here, so I got a couple more questions I want to touch on. Do you find smaller teams or bigger teams have a harder time wrapping their head around this?
So from experience doing workshops I've done a handful with teams that are 30 plus people versus a team that's 10 or less. The workshops go way better with the 10 or less, to the point that I've imposed it on the 30 or more teams to do a workshop with only their leadership team and then do a workshop with the bigger one, because the power that comes in these workshops we do an exercise where we sit around a table and the person reads the upside of their profile, and then they read the be aware side of their profile, and the whole team grades it. How accurate is that to the person? And we always start with the owner or the leader of a team. And it's hilarious when they see the upside, and especially if it's accurate, they're like, "Oh, that's 9 out of 10, or it's 8 out of 10," and then they read the downside or the be aware, and they're like, I don't know, like a 5 out of 10. And the owner's like, that's 100% me.
Yeah.
They like share that. And then you feel like an air of relief on the team that's like, oh, I can finally kind of call you out on this thing that you do. And now I understand why you do it this way. In those bigger teams, at least on the workshop side, it's harder to have those moments unless you can break them into teams that actually work together. Yeah. Just knowing someone's geniuses is very valuable. It's powerful and profound when you can actually sit with people you work with day to day. And before I send you an email, before I make a comment in a meeting, I'm like, okay, ID. Or I'm thinking of your frustrations. Yeah. Okay, I'm about to send, actually this comes up with Cam here at Refinery, who I meet with weekly. I had to use a language with him that was, when you send me an email or you send me a text, I need you to tell me, are you just making me aware of the problem, or are you solving it, or do you need my help?
Yep.
And I will tell you, I don't want to be aware of the problem unless you need me to solve it or you need help or, whatever. And that was because of frustration of tenacity. Don't put something on my plate that I then have to spin my wheels to figure out, did you need help? Did you not need help?
Now you're thinking about it. You're trying to figure out how you can solve it.
Yeah. And he's enablement and tenacity. Yeah. And so I'm like, you're a doer. You get it done. If you run into a road, and I'd rather you do it wrong, I'm okay with you doing it wrong. But if you don't know how to do it, then engage me, because I get to use my discernment to figure out the right way to do this. And then we proceed, right? So to answer your question, I think it's all about how passionate is the team lead or the owner about this, and how deep can those conversations happen on the team to make, and I think this works for any assessment, any profile or personality assessment, is how serious are you going to be as a team?
How do you apply it?
Yeah. And we do a big thing on this in a workshop, not weaponize it. Weaponizing is a big thing, and it's not to, someone asked once, we'll do, everyone can ask write it on a sticky note between sections of the workshop, and they put it up on a whiteboard, and I read them. And then before we start the next section, I answer those questions that they still have. Yeah. And so one was, how do I not let this, my profile, keep me out from strategic meetings? Because they were very much an implementation person. And they go, I feel like this is going to regulate me out of advancement within the company, right? And it's like, your genius tells you what you find fulfillment in, not what you're good at. Not what you're good at.
That makes sense.
Right? So, yeah.
Well, and I think too, it probably goes the other way too. Weaponizing it, saying, well, my frustration is this, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah. You can't ask me to do that because I don't get fulfillment out of it. So don't ask me to do it.
Yeah. It's not a hall pass. Yeah. It's not a hall pass from your frustrations or from doing that work.
Cool. Okay. So obviously, this is one book, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What other resources do you recommend that can help teams grow and, be better, about utilizing the people on their team, to do better and be less frustrated, I guess?
Yeah. So this is where I would recommend, it's Working Geniuses, or you do anything, it's worth the cost of hiring a professional to do a workshop with you. Only if your leadership is bought in.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, don't waste your money if this isn't something you actually want to do. But it's pretty much a low cost to get everyone on the same page to start experimenting and trying new things in your business, right? Down to, one recommendation I give to clients is if you do weekly meetings with anyone on your team, it'll be a quick scorecard that's rate the last 5 work days, G, C, or F. Genius, competency, frustration. Where were you spending your time? And you'll see over time, if somebody keeps putting F, chances are they're in the wrong role, or something is happening that's not letting them be where they need to be, and they're going to quit on you. It is going to happen, and you can catch it really, really early in that. So I recommend that. Any other Patrick Lencioni book, they're so easy. They're very quick reads. They're really cheap. The Ideal Team Player, it talks about, they say, don't hire jerks. So you want hungry, humble, and smart people on your team, right? That one's a really great way to see yourself as part of a collective. Ask yourself, do I match with the culture that's here on this team as well? And being, as a company, be so forthcoming with your culture that people would opt out of working with you, right? So anyway, all of his books I would highly recommend on that front.
And you're still doing, you're doing consultations with teams and going through this.
Yeah. I haven't been marketing it that much because of this other commercial building. But I still do it with people, and actually,
Well, to the millions of our followers
Yes.
and viewers, you're about to get
yes.
a lot of calls.
Well, one of the greatest compliments I received was an architect firm that I did a workshop for, and the owner of the firm went up and introduced me to her team and said, the reason I picked Addison, and she actually reached out to the table group, to Patrick Lencioni's group.
Oh, really?
To find like an indie rep to do this, and had a conversation with them, and then met me and still hired me to do it, which I was like, well,
awesome.
I know I was cheaper. So I know that was like probably a decision. But when she introduced, she said, the reason I picked him is because he doesn't do this for a living. He practices it for a living. He runs teams. He works with people, and he's going to talk from real world experiences that he has, not just the theoretical side. So that's why I still like doing it. It's a pure passion for me to be able to sit with teams and problem solve, and for people to walk away. And I do have to give a disclaimer. It happened at the last 2 sessions I did for people. Someone quit their job at both of them because they're like, I'm not going to be, and I was like, that's not the goal. The goal is hopefully reorient and find what's fulfilling for you. But both business owners said that was the best thing that could have happened for that person and for them. Was finally seeing the role and the frustrations that they've had in a light that wasn't personal. Yeah. It was just work.
Nice. So if you need to get rid of somebody on your team and cheaply,
very cheaply.
Hire Addison. So.
Yes, they'll opt out themselves. No severance needed. So.
Well, man, that's great information, and obviously, you are an expert in that field. Just by talking, you can tell like this is something. Yeah, you mentioned you're passionate about, and so first and foremost, thanks for taking the time out of your day, and look forward to digging in a little bit deeper on this. And if anybody has any questions, reach out to Addison, reach out to myself. Would love to connect with you guys and talk a little bit more about this and how it can help you and your team. Addison, appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Free offering to anyone. If you take the test, email me. I'll send you my breakdown of all the pairings. So it's a little more in depth than what the assessment gives you itself. And tell me if you like it or not. Awesome. Always refining it. So
love it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.